At the beginning of the movie, we see a man named Charles Van Doren, who seems to be a wealthy individual. He is being shown an expensive car by another man as he admires everything in it. The scene shifts and we see another man entering the bank. He goes to a locker, opens it, and takes out a packet with 21 written over it. He comes out of the bank and hands the packet over to another person in the car. This highly confidential packet contains the questions and answers to be used for the latest broadcast of NBC's popular quiz show 21. They are basically transported from a secure bank vault to the studio. The evening's main attraction is Queens resident Herb Stempel, who is a 29-year-old ex-GI college student. Herb is the reigning champion, who correctly answers question after question. However, both the network and the program's corporate sponsor, the supplementary tonic Geritol, find that Stempel's approval ratings are beginning to level out, meaning that the show would benefit from new talent. One day, producers Dan Enright and Albert Friedman are surprised when Columbia University instructor Charles Van Doren, the son of a prominent literary family, visits their office to audition. They decided to remove Herb from the showing by saying that nobody looks up to a weird guy with a side haircut. Realizing that they have found an ideal challenger for Stempel, they offer to ask the same questions during the show that Van Doren correctly answered during his audition. He refuses this offer because he believes in beating Herb honestly. Then, Enright and Friedman ask him to think about it and Van Doren still refuses. After this, they begin laughing and Van Doren thinks that it was just a part of the test, and they were kidding with him. Enright and Friedman follow along and tell him that they will do the quiz with complete honesty. This answer makes Van Doren satisfied and he leaves the office waiting to be called. After this, the producers make Herb meet Van Doren and he tells Herb that he is scared of him. Herb goes out to dinner with Enright and during the dinner, he tells Herb that people want to see something new now. This makes Herb mad because he doesn't want to lose to Van Doren, so he asks Enright to let him play honestly. However, Enright just pays the bill and leaves him alone at the dinner table. Back home, Herb is teaching his son Lester some general knowledge questions. His wife notices that he looks frustrated and asks him what's wrong. Herb tells her that the producers are going to ask him the simplest question on the show, and they want him to take the dive. His wife comforts him and asks him to screw them because they can do nothing to Herb. Herb takes the advice and feels confident. During the show, Herb and Van Doren come face to face and the host asks Herb to take the money he has won till now and leave. However, Herb decides to play against Van Doren. Then comes the time when he has to give a wrong answer. This is when he comes within reach of a game winning 21 points on the show. After a moment of moral indecision, he deliberately misses an easy question and loses, having been promised a future in television if he does so. This makes Herb lose 3 points. Meanwhile, Van Doren is asked the same question from his audition earlier and he realizes that the producers cheated by asking him the same question. After giving the correct answer, he wins the quiz and becomes the new champion. In the weeks that follow, Van Doren's winning streak makes him a national celebrity, but he buckles under the pressure and allows Enright and Friedman to start giving him the answers. Meanwhile, Herb, having lost his prize money to an unscrupulous bookie, begins threatening legal action against NBC after weeks go by without his return to television. He visits New York County District Attorney Frank Hogan, who convenes a grand jury to look into his allegations. After this, he is finally able to meet with Enright and he asks Herb to sign a statement to clear him and the company. However, Herb gets mad at him for throwing him out and refuses to sign. Then, he threatens Enright to bring him down along with the show by telling everyone that it's a fraud. Meanwhile, Richard Goodwin, a young congressional lawyer, learns that the grand jury findings have been sealed and travels to New York City to investigate rumors of rigged quiz shows. After meeting with a number of people who appeared on the show, he begins to suspect that 21 is a fixed operation. Goodwin meets with Van Doren in his office one day and asks him questions about the show. Van Doren fears for his reputation and they are suddenly interrupted by some students, so Goodwin decides to come some other day. After their meeting, Van Doren calls Enright and informs him about the situation. However, Enright tells him to stay calm as he is handling Goodwin and he has nothing to worry about. Then, Goodwin meets with Van Doren at dinner. During their formal conversation, Van Doren's father joins them, and they invite him over for a game of poker at their home. This marks the end of their conversation and Goodwin is unable to get anything out of the situation. After this, while Van Doren is having a routine practice of questions about the next quiz, he asks the producers to give him real questions and stop giving him answers. Meanwhile, Goodwin finally finds Herb as his next suspect and goes to his house to investigate. Herb gets happy to see him because he feels like he will finally be able to take revenge. Goodwin asks him what he told the grand jury, but Herb hesitates to disclose it to him. Then, Goodwin convinces him, and he tells him that the producers made him lose deliberately over the easiest question and the show is fixed. Goodwin gets suspicious and decides to investigate further. The following day, Goodwin joins Van Doren at his house for his father's birthday lunch. During lunch, everyone asks Van Doren about his winning prize until now and he discloses it to be around $122,000. After lunch, Goodwin tells Van Doren about his meeting with Herb, but Van Doren brushes it off saying that it's a ridiculous allegation. Then, he tells Goodwin that everyone he has interviewed so far is lying about the show being fixed. The next day, Goodwin meets Enright and Friedman to get to the truth, but they tell him that Herb has gone nuts. Then they make Goodwin hear a tape recording of Herb's meeting with Enright right after he quit the show. In the recording, Herb could be clearly heard threatening Enright and asking him for the money. This turns the tables in the favor of the producers, and Goodwin also thinks that Herb is trying to defame the show for money. Therefore, Herb's volatile personality damages his credibility, and nobody else seems willing to confirm that the show is fixed. Later on, Herb meets with Goodwin, and he tells Herb that he knows how he threatened to blackmail Enright to get to the panel show. Herb tries to convince him, but Goodwin doesn't believe him. Fearing Goodwin will give up the investigation, Herb confesses that he was fed the correct answers during his run on the show and insists that Van Doren must have been involved as well. After hearing Herb's confession, Goodwin stops and asks him why he played the victim when he was involved in the fixation of the show too. He gets mad at Herb for lying and leaves. After meeting with Herb, Goodwin watches the old video of the show from when Herb lost. After this, Goodwin goes to play a game of poker with Van Doren. During their game, he asks different questions regarding a murder investigation, and Van Doren manages to answer all the questions correctly. The next day, Van Doren meets with the producers, and he seems very anxious about Goodwin finding out the truth. However, Friedman and Enright assure him that they won't let a word slip, so he has nothing to worry about. After this, Van Doren goes to his father's house to calm himself down and has a little conversation with his dad, reliving the memories of his childhood. Meanwhile, Goodwin watches all the previous videos of the shows, observing different contestants. While he is watching an old video, he notices something strange about the way the contestant was answering questions. He decides to pay him a visit and find out what's wrong. This former contestant gives Goodwin a set of answers that he mailed to himself 2 days before his quiz show appearance, which Goodwin takes to be corroborating evidence. After this, Goodwin goes to meet with the president of NBC named Mr. Kintner and informs him that he has proof of the show being rigged. However, Mr. Kintner does not take his allegations seriously and leaves. After this, NBC comes up with another episode of the show featuring Van Doren against a female contestant. During the show, Van Doren deliberately loses, but NBC offers him a lucrative contract to appear as a special correspondent on the Morning Today show. They offer him a $50,000 contract, and Van Doren couldn't resist the offer and signs it. After the show, Goodwin meets with Enright and shows him the evidence he got from a former contestant. When Enright sees it, he begs Goodwin not to disclose it, but when Goodwin refuses, he gives him an offer to be on the panel show. After hearing this, Goodwin laughs at Enright and leaves. The next day, Goodwin goes to Van Doren's house and confronts him about losing the quiz deliberately. Van Doren tells him that he just wanted to get off the show because he couldn't continue it further. Then, Goodwin asks him whether he got the answers to the questions before the show or not. Van Doren tries to fight his questions at first, but then he gets mad and finally admits to receiving the answers because he wanted to get a better life. After hearing from Van Doren, Goodwin asks him to keep his mouth shut and not involve himself in any interviews on the media. In the meantime, the House Committee for Legislative Oversight convenes a hearing, at which Goodwin presents his evidence of the quiz show's corruption. Stempel testifies at the hearing and informs the jury that he always received the answers to the questions on Fridays, and then after their rehearsals on Monday, he would answer all the questions correctly. Then, Goodwin presents another video footage of Herb on the show answering questions and proving that everything was fixed. However, when Herb involves Van Doren and discloses that he got the answers as well, the judges begin suspecting his mental state of trying to fame an intellectual person and professor like Van Doren. So, Herb fails to convince the committee, and both NBC network head Robert Kintner and Geritol executive Martin Rittenholm deny any knowledge of 21 being rigged. After a couple of questions in front of the judges, both of them go free without any charges. Suddenly, Goodwin gets the news that Van Doren has made a statement. Goodwin discovers that Van Doren has denied being involved in any kind of fixation of the show. After hearing this, Goodwin goes to meet Van Doren and tries to convince him to testify in front of the committee. He tells Van Doren that this is his chance to do the right thing. After this, Van Doren meets with his dad in the college and shares his problem with him. Van Doren feels guilty for being a fraud on the show and admits that he got the answers in front of his father. His father gets mad at him for cheating, so Charlie decides to finally reveal the truth. Subpoenaed by Goodwin, Van Doren testifies before the committee and admits his role in the deception. Van Doren gets the appreciation of the entire court for telling the truth. After the hearing adjourns, he learns from reporters that he has been fired from Today and that Columbia's Board of Trustees is going to ask for his resignation. He also sees Herb on his way out and could not face him. Meanwhile, Goodwin believes that he is on the verge of a victory against Geritol and NBC, but realizes that Enright and Friedman will not jeopardize their own futures in television by turning against their bosses. He silently watches the producer's testimony, vindicating the sponsors and the network from any wrongdoing, and taking full responsibility for rigging the show. This is where the movie ends. What are your thoughts on this movie? Share with us in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And thank you for watching.